But the fragile ilabako. Like if you for instance season allocation. Otherwise itakuwa safe sana. No mwini pantu ne mwena shirafika.
Ngakukonka umuntu onse kutya alefa yokukula. Nomba lero tumone opo tulekula ni pesa. Kushe kutiba kupera fyenchende mumenshi ule tumina no kusumina fwe mwenewa ati nala kula fi. Awe tetu chifiroko. Tuimona fe fwe bene abako. Tule mona abana. Dimbinshiri pondi kunchito. Umwana ashala bamudonsa kunwe. Pantini mukamana mu.
This was the picture during the 2019 to 2020 rainy season across Kitwe. Expensive houses flooded to the roof. These mansions were built within 50 meters of the Kafue River. A common trend along this river, a common disaster which displaces hundreds of people every year in the city. And this is a problem which has prompted the Kitwe District Land Alliance to sensitize the public.
So this one we're trying to show what are the effects of building along the river banks. Of late we saw our colleagues, those who are still at Buchiho, what happened to their houses, those who built along the Kafue River. The law clearly stipulates procedures on how to build along the river banks. Actually, it's supposed to be 50 meters away from the river bank. No one's supposed to build. Even for the sake of this document, we didn't talk about the road. When you look at the Forest Act, it will tell you that 30 meters or 50 meters from the center of the road, no building should be there. But you and me, you will see that a lot of buildings are coming out along the rail reserve. Rail reserve, it has got also about 30-40 meters away. No one should build. But you find that people are still building. Now, what are the effects? The effects are many. Number one, effects about climate change. Number two is that it creates difficulties by the government when you want to do something. The other thing is destroys biodiversity, ecosystem in the rivers. There are certain insects which are in the river. Our colleagues from the environment will tell you they are very important. As we may not know that they are important, everything that God created, it is very important. So if we build along the rivers, some trees will not be able to survive. Some grass will not be able to survive. The flow of water will not be smooth. So when the water starts stagnating, what are we doing? We are creating the breeding ground for mosquitoes because that water is stagnant. Water is supposed to be moving.
According to the Zambian constitution, land is vested in the president, but the Ministry of Lands administers this resource on behalf of the nation. All applications for title deeds and maps for plots are issued by the ministry. However, the ministry has no representation in all districts countrywide. The local authorities have been delegated the authority to administer land.
People should protect land and especially the water sources, the riverbanks. We have to ensure that, especially here in the urban setup, we are seeing a lot of abuse of the rivers that we have. You know, you find that, especially when you look at even the car wash, we are seeing a lot of mushrooming of the car wash. Well, we appreciate the young people want to have a life at the end of the day. But some of the investment and activities in terms of entrepreneurship are hazardous, because when you find them, doing the washing of the cars, maybe beside a stream, and what about that pollution? What is the local authority doing about it? So we are not saying they go in and maybe disturb those. It's a matter of sensitization and see how best this car wash can be done. And even the people want to do investment. Even when you allocate a land near a riverbank, what is it that you're doing to that river? What is it that you're going to do to protect that water source? So we want to see that kind of action, and also patriotism in the way we do our business in terms of land business, and also as we work around the riverbanks.
Kitwe is the second largest city in Zambia in terms of size and population. According to the 2010 census, the city has slightly above 500,000 residents. This major transit town has seen a sharp rise in demand for land in the past few years due to its increase in population. This has led to people allocating land in places where legally someone cannot acquire land. One of these are riverbanks, which have been heavily encroached on. From Chimamwe to Bulangililo, Chipata compound to Mwaiseni, people have built houses a few meters from the river. This has led to floods.
So a river bank or a bank reserve is basically some meters away from a stream or from a river. It's about 50 meters. The whole essence why that has been prescribed both under the Urban and Regional Planning Act as well as the ZEMA regulations is to avoid constricting the flow of water. So the whole problem that we are dealing with has to do with, number one, the high levels of urbanization. Two, majority are not aware that you can't build there. There's need for a lot of sensitization, which has led to people building in areas they are not supposed to build. So for us as a local authority, we are equally affected, because when you receive, for instance, dignitaries like the president, and then people are saying, no, why have you allowed them to build there? It appears like we are not aware, but yet we've taken steps to notify them. Some have even been given enforcement notices. If you go to Mwaiseni, for instance, before the house could even reach just slab level, some of those developers were notified in writing, but they still proceeded. So we've had challenges because we have very limited building inspectors. You can't have a few building inspectors policing the whole city. This is where you expect residents, onlookers to alert the local authority that there's this that is happening. You go to Chipata compound. I was privileged to have been a councillor there for 10 years. Year in, we would move people out, take them upstream, find them alternative land where they could build. Immediately the rain season goes, they would go back. It's been a perennial activity. So it's not as simple as it may sound. It requires a lot of sensitization. It requires a lot of enforcement. We're actually thinking that maybe this year we need to demolish all the houses by the riverbanks, so that by the time the rain season is coming, we would have moved people to places where they could build permanently. It's a very complicated problem because we've tried and we've had challenges.
But some got genuine papers from the local authority, but they still built houses inside rivers and streams. A good number of these houses are issued illegally by civic leaders. In Kitwe, a number of serving and former councillors are on record of having either been arrested or jailed for illegally allocating plots. This includes the immediate past mayor of Kitwe, who survived by a suspended sentence a year ago.
But governance is simply the way of following the laws and the rules which you have given yourselves. The councillors, when they are elected in the office, they have got what they call operating manual for the councillors and the officers. There is nowhere where the councillor as an individual is given the mandate to allocate land. So for us, we are very much concerned that it's sad indeed to find that some councillors have been implicated, are appearing in court, others have been convicted. But that should serve as a warning to the sitting councillors and those who would be councillors. I think it's important for them to familiarize themselves with how the councils operate. A council is a legal entity. It can be sued. So meaning that when you are acting on behalf of the council, you are immune from being being sued as an individual. Why? Because you are working under the legal entity of the local authority. Those who have been implicated, it simply means that they are not working within the mandate of the local authority, because the local authority is an agent of the Ministry of Land. Even the local authority itself, if it misbehaves, we have seen, what does the Ministry of Land do? They revoke their agent's license. It means that they are no longer allowed to administer land. So what about an individual? So please, we appealing to our councillors, they are honorables, to make sure that they don't engage themselves with the illegal land allocation.
Building on riverbanks is not only risky to occupants, it is also a threat to the environment.
These riverbanks and rivers themselves are home for our aquatic, organisms and wildlife. They're not only home for our aquatic, life, they also provide essential, services to our well-being, and including our development. And I think it is very critical to realize that everything is interconnected. The insects, the organisms, and all the aquatic life that we are killing by building houses around riverbanks will eventually affect us. And you agree with me that in the past few years, we have been affected by droughts, and that has to do with our protection of our riverbanks. There used to be water in most of the riverbanks in Kitwe and across Zambia, but you agree with me that this time around, very few rivers in the CBD and around the town centers have water. And it largely has to do with our construction of houses, the structures that we have decided to build around these riverbanks.
During the 2019 to 2020 rainy season, hundreds of Kitwe residents who built houses few meters from the Kafue River had their houses flooded. They first sought shelter in churches before government relocated them to several safe areas. In the end, people who allocate this land near rivers and those who buy such plots need to know the consequences of their actions.
You can't build without planning permission. So if you are found building, or if I'm found building without planning permission, the law is very clear. You give an enforcement notice, next thing you demolish. That is what the law prescribes. It does not impose a fee on a developer, because once we impose a fee, it means we have allowed you to build at that cost. So within the riverbank, 50 meters, no type of construction is allowed. That's the regulation. There's no penalty, it's just demolition.
Rivers supply the much-needed water which the country relies on for the production of hydroelectricity. Safeguarding the rivers is safeguarding the country's future and its economic activities. Let's protect the rivers and let's protect the environment.